Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty amazing, a process our bodies pull off all the time, without us even thinking about it. We're talking about how a simple cut actually stops itself from bleeding.
You know the feeling, right? You get a tiny paper cut, it stings for a second, maybe a little drop of blood, and then it just stops. So how does that happen? Well, it might seem like magic, but it's actually some of the most incredible biology at work.
So there's a fancy name for this whole self-repair thing, hemostasis, and what drives it is this incredibly precise set of instructions called the coagulation cascade. Seriously, it's one of the most elegant and absolutely vital systems in our entire body.
All right, so let's kick things off right at the moment of injury. I want you to think of a cut as more than just damage. It's basically the body's own internal 911 call, an urgent signal that help is needed and fast.
But here's the cool part. This isn't a panic. When that 911 call goes out, it doesn't just trigger some chaotic mad dash. No, instead, it sets off this perfectly timed step-by-step activation of proteins. It's exactly like a line of dominoes, where each one has to fall in the perfect order to get the job done.
Okay, so who answers that emergency call? Let's meet the team. These are the real unsung heroes of hemostasis. We call them the clotting factors.
The best way to think about these factors is like a highly trained emergency response crew. Most of them are made in the liver, and they're just kind of floating around in your blood, totally inactive, just on standby. They're waiting for that signal to jump into action. And as soon as one gets activated, boom, it immediately triggers the next one in line.
Now, there are a bunch of these factors involved, over a dozen actually. But the final act, well, it really boils down to these three key players. You've got factor X, who's like the project manager, keeping everything organized. Then you have thrombin, the master builder who's doing the actual construction. And finally, fibrinogen. That's the raw material, the stuff they use to build the patch.
So the big question is, how does this crew even get the signal to start working? Well, it turns out the body is really smart about this. It actually has two completely different alarm systems, and each one is designed for a specific kind of emergency.
So for something like a paper cut, that's external trauma. The body uses what's called the extrinsic pathway. Think of it as the rapid response team. It kicks in within seconds. But for damage inside a blood vessel, it uses the slower, more careful intrinsic pathway. This one's more like an internal security patrol.
Let's take a closer look at that fast track first, the extrinsic one. So an external injury happens, and the damaged cells release something called tissue factor. This stuff immediately teams up with another factor, number 7, and a little bit of calcium. Together, they form this really potent complex that has one single job, to activate our project manager, factor X. Super quick, super efficient, straight to the point.
Now, the internal patrol, that's a little more involved. It has a few more steps. It all starts when blood makes contact with a damaged surface on the inside of a blood vessel. That contact sets off its own chain reaction, its own domino effect, activating factor 12, which activates 11, which then activates 9. Finally, factors 9 and 8 get together to form their own little team, but, you guessed it, their goal is exactly the same: activate factor X.
So, you see, we've got these two beautifully designed alarm systems. One's super fast, one's a bit slower. But here's the thing. They both lead to the exact same super critical point in the process.
It doesn't matter how that alarm gets triggered, whether it's from a cut on the outside or damage on the inside. The message is always the same. Get the project manager, factor X, on the job. Right here, this is where everything comes together. And this meeting point kicks off what's known as the common pathway. See, everything up to now has just been about getting the right signal to the right place. But now the real construction is about to begin. All right, our project manager, Factor X, is officially on the clock. The blueprints are ready to go. It is time to build the solution and patch this leak for good.
So, first things first, activated factor X helps create an enzyme complex. Its job? To find an inactive protein called prothrombin and basically flip its on switch. And that simple activation transforms prothrombin into our master builder, thrombin. And let me tell you, this is one of the most powerful and important enzymes in the whole shebang. It is officially ready to get to work.
And it doesn't waste any time. With incredible speed, thrombin gets started on its main job. It hunts down our raw material, a protein called fibrinogen that's just floating around in the blood, and it kicks off a chemical reaction to change it into something else.
And that something else is fibrin. Now, fibrin is a total game changer. It's completely different from fibrinogen. It's not soluble, and it's super sticky. It immediately starts forming these long, tough, thread-like strands right there at the wound, creating this amazing microscopic safety net.
But, a loose net isn't going to cut it. So for the final touch, another factor, factor 13, swoops in and acts just like superglue. It creates these chemical links between all the fibrin threads, weaving them together into a really strong, stable mesh.
And that final stable structure, that's the finished clot. It's the perfect plug. It traps platelets and blood cells, completely stops the bleeding, and creates this safe little bubble underneath so the vessel wall can start the real work of healing.
And there you have it. That is how a simple cut manages to heal itself. It is an absolutely beautiful, precise, and life-saving system. But the whole thing is built on this perfect, delicate balance, which kind of leaves us with one last question, doesn't it? If this whole incredible process depends on every single one of those dominoes falling just right, what happens when just one of them is missing?